Hey guys, I bet you won't be able to figure out exactly what we're talking about in this video today, unless you've of course read the title of the video or you see exactly what is in front of me. That's right. Welcome back to another video. In this video, we're going to be talking about radio-controlled car tires. We're going to figure out exactly what 4 items of them actually contributes to the performance of the tire. Those 4 items that we're going to be dialing into is going to be the inertia of a tire. We're going to spend quite a bit of time on inertia. Then we're going to look at the weight of the tire and how that actually impacts the performance of your vehicle. We're going to take a look at the traction of the tire. There are different types of tread that's being used, and we're going to see how that actually contributes to some advantages, disadvantages of the tire. And then lastly, we're going to focus on the diameter of the tire and what does that actually get from us. I'm going to be talking a little bit more in detail about all of these tires that I have on the table today here when we go through the actual layout of how we're going to measure acceleration so that we can calculate and determine the amount of inertia of each one of these tires. Let's go ahead and jump down to where the ramp is at. Hey guys, so here we are. We're at the ramp that is going to be used in order to measure the acceleration of a tire, starting out at the top of our ramp and making its way down to the bottom of the ramp. Now what I've done is I've placed a bunch of markings on a piece of green tape attached to this ramp right at the front, as you can see, and it has increments from 0 inches all the way down to about 52 inches, which is outside of the range that you can actually see within this camera. However, the high-speed camera that we're going to use is going to shoot at a rate of 240 frames per second, and it is also going to be able to see all the amount of increments that we need in order to make this measurement. What we're interested in is capturing the amount of acceleration that a tire has as it makes its way down the ramp. This way we can go ahead and calculate what we're ultimately interested in, and that is of course the inertia that each one of these tires are going to have. And each tire is going to have a different inertia value. And we'll be able to talk about all of that at the end of the video. So a couple things to point out is that when I go and have the tire starting off at the top of the ramp here, I don't care at what speed it actually crosses that 0 mark. If it crosses that 0 mark at a higher rate of speed than the last tire did, it does not matter. We're not interested in the initial speed. We're only interested in the amount of acceleration that occurs as it goes from point to point. And the acceleration is going to be constant because the gravity constant does not change, and it is also using the same angle from the top of the ramp all the way to the bottom of the ramp. Okay, so I do want to give you a little bit of a demonstration to see exactly how this is going to work and an opportunity to talk about each of the tires that we're actually testing in the video. So the first one that we have here is a 1/10 scale stadium truck tire. There's nothing special about this. I think it's a Proline Dirt Hog. Yep. It's going to track very straight and true as we release it. Therefore, I don't need to give it an initial push. So we'll see how that goes down the ramp. And just as predicted, nice, straight, and true. So the next one that we have, this one actually came on a factory 1/8 scale on-road vehicle. This is the stock tire that you'd get. So there's nothing too special about this tire. It is pretty straightforward, relatively small and light in weight. It does not have a wide tread width, and it does have a tread pattern within it. So we'll go ahead and give that a little bit of a push so that it tracks straight and true. And there you have it. So that's that tire. The next one that we have is a 1/8 scale on-road. This has a slick. It's also a little bit wider than the typical tire, and it is steel belted and capable of speeds over 100 miles an hour. This one I do need to give quite a bit of a push because it does not track straight and true. So there we go. The next couple are Buggy tires. This is a 1/8 scale Buggy tire. It is relatively tall, big in diameter, but the actual width of the tire is narrow. So we'll go ahead and see how this tracks down. Little bit of push. It has a little bit of a wobble. Otherwise, it is okay. This tire here is a 1/8 scale Buggy tire. It is the factory option that you can actually get on a specific model. We're going to go ahead and give this a little push too so it can track nice and straight and true. The next tire that we have is a 1/18 scale Letrax pre-runner tire. This one here is awfully small, as you can probably see. Let me know if you can see the difference in acceleration from one tire or another. When I looked, I personally could not see it just by looking at the footage in 1-to-1 ratio. Once I slowed it down, that's where you can actually see the difference in acceleration from tire to tire to tire. So we'll go ahead, just like we did with the other ones, start this one off, give it a good push. It tracked nice and straight and true. That's excellent. Now this guy is, of course, the opposite of what we just saw. It's the largest that we have. I'm gonna have to give this tire a little bit more of a push in order to track straight and true down our ramp. So here we go. We're gonna give this guy a good bit of push. And there you have it. So that's all the tires that we're going to use. We're going to go ahead and now take the data and then see what kind of inertia values we can actually calculate from these acceleration values. Okay, so here we have our results. Now to get these results, what we had to do is take all of our points, plot it on a chart, take the line of best fit equation and extract the acceleration component from it. Once we had that acceleration component, all we need to do from there is plug it right into our inertia formula, and that is how we were able to calculate the inertia for each one of these specific tires. Now, one thing I want to do is point out exactly what inertia is all about and what it means. To do that, I'm going to grab our largest tire here, and I'm giving it away right now, but this tire does have the most amount of inertia, and it's on the board. You can see it out of all the tires that we have. And one of the reasons is because it has most of its weight far away from the axis of rotation. And that distance from the outside of the tire to the center of the tire is the largest out of all of the tires that we have. So now we need to talk about how inertia actually affects our tires. What does inertia actually mean for us? Well, essentially the way it works is that the more inertia that a tire has, it's going to be more difficult to get the tire to accelerate up to a certain speed. Once it's at that speed, it's going to be difficult to slow down. So when you apply the brakes, it's going to be difficult to decelerate all of that inertia that is built up from the speed. To quickly summarize exactly what we said, a tire can have more inertia if it has a higher concentration of mass further away from its axes of rotation, which essentially would be the center of the tire. If you do have a high inertia within a tire, it's going to be harder to accelerate that tire as well as slow it down. Ultimately, what we want is the lowest amount of inertia if our goal is to accelerate that tire as fast as we possibly can in order to hit top speed right away. And at the same time, we want to be able to slow that car down really quickly, which means we also want a low inertia to slam on the brakes and bring that vehicle to a stop. There really is no big benefit to having a tire with a high amount of inertia, other than if you want to coast forever and utilize that momentum to carry you forward, which really doesn't get us anywhere within our radio control car. So let's take a look at the values that we got from all of our tires here up on the board. So the random tires that we included in the mix is to show us the difference between a small tire, a typical medium-sized tire, and then the large tire. And you can see here that the Dirt Hog, this is the 1/10 scale stadium truck tire, ended up having an inertia of 0.3208 grams per meter squared. We take a look at the next one here, and that's the Letrax tire. That has an inertia value of 0.0311 grams per meter squared. That is obviously quite small when compared with our 1/10 scale radio control car tire. And then when we go and look at the largest tire that we have, which is that 1/10 scale monster truck tire that comes on the Traxxas Summit, that is at 5.1914 grams per meter squared. All of these values make sense because our smallest tire has the lowest amount of inertia and our largest tire has the highest amount of inertia. Now let's take a look at tires that are more along the same scale so that we can see the relative difference between them. So here we have at the very top of our list the on-road slick. That is the very wide slick that we're using for on-road applications that can exceed 100 miles per hour. It is actually the tire that has the widest tread pattern, which can deliver the most amount of traction to the ground out of all of the 1/8 scale tires that we have in our comparison today. That came in at 0.3996 grams per meter squared. The next tire that we have is a tire that you typically find on a stock 1/8 scale vehicle. That came out at the lightest in terms of inertia value at 0.2593 grams per meter squared. It is a smaller tire. It certainly does not have the same belting capabilities in order to resist that high speed. These will blow apart at anything above the 55 miles per hour range. That's why its inertia value happens to be fairly good. The next one we have is the tall on-road narrow width treaded tire, and that comes in at 0.5169 grams per meter squared. This does make sense because we just talked about having a larger diameter. This is our largest diameter tire that we have there. It's going to have more of its mass at the outer edges where that tread is, and that's what contributes to a larger amount of inertia, even though the tread is relatively thin. On the next tire, this is where we have more of a thick treaded tire, but it doesn't have as wide of a tread as our on-road slick, but because it is again larger in diameter, not quite as large as our tire above here, it comes in at 0.7118 grams per meter squared. Now the big question comes, if you look at all of these different tires, which one would you choose for your specific on-road application for a 1/8 scale vehicle? Well, if you look at the difference in inertia between the 0.2593 versus the 0.7118, you would preferably want to take and select the tire that comes with the least amount of inertia. This way you can accelerate as quickly as possible, and then you can slow the vehicle down as quickly as possible. Therefore, you'd probably want to take one of the top two, which is really interesting because that is more of our high performance 1/8 scale on-road car tires. Based on inertia alone, we would select one of the first two tires here on our list because the inertia values happen to be the smallest. In order to figure out which tire is best suited for our radio-controlled on-road vehicle, we're going to have to look at more than just the inertia value. One of the next items that we have is the weight of the tire. Here we have a bunch of different masses of the tires that I've ended up weighing. We can see that the Letrax tire comes out of course at our lowest amount of weight. 26 grams is the weight of that Letrax tire. Our 1/10 scale monster truck comes in at 314 grams, being our largest tire. And then all of the 1/8 scale car tires come in between 92 grams and 115 grams. The 92 grams was our factory stock on-road treaded tire, and then the 115 gram tire were actually both of the Buggy tires. So it was the 1/8 scale on-road Buggy tire as well as the 1/8 scale off-road Buggy tire. So those came in at the heaviest. Now let's talk about what the weight of the tire actually does for us. Weight of the tire does contribute to the amount of inertia, so we won't get into that. The component that we need to focus on for the weight of a tire happens to be in this category of unsprung weight. Unsprung weight is any weight that is going to be traveling with the tire as it goes over a bump. So you can imagine that the axles, the tire itself, the hub, control arms, all of these items is going to travel with the tire, and most of that component, or if not all of that component, is going to consider being under the category of unsprung weight. Unsprung weight is going to affect your handling characteristics as you're traveling over bumps on the road, on the track, wherever you're racing your radio control vehicle. If you want to optimize the amount of unsprung weight that your vehicle has, one area you can do it is within the weight of the tire. Now, I personally have not seen a large difference between, for example, the 92 gram tire versus the 115 gram tire when going around a road course and traveling over bumps that affect the suspension of our radio controlled cars. I have not seen it, but I'm sure that the more aggressive racer who has tons of experience may be able to talk more about that. Now let's move on to our next component. So here we have the third point and the fourth point up on the board. The third point is all about traction. Now I've broken this down into three specific categories. The first being soft tread, the second being medium tread, and the third option there being a hard treaded tire. Now, a good balance between the soft and the hard tread is going to be your medium tread. This is going to have a good amount of compromise between the advantages that you get from the soft tire and the advantages that you get from a hard tire. So let's go ahead and look at the soft tire. A soft tire has a lot of advantages when it comes to grip. This is the main important ingredient that you're looking for in a tire if you're looking to get high amounts of traction. Now, the traction that you get does apply to both on-road vehicles as well as off-road vehicles, and both can significantly benefit from a soft treaded tire. My preference personally is to go with a soft treaded tire for my off-road applications, and I make a little bit of a different choice when I'm looking at my on-road car tire preferences for radio control vehicles. And the primary reason is because I operate a lot more on-road vehicles and I want my treads to last a little bit longer. And we'll get to that very shortly. So when it comes to high traction, this can be for acceleration. It also is for braking and of course the cornering ability of that tire when it's installed onto your radio control car. And as we talked about, it is great for off-road as well, especially when you're doing some sort of rock climbing and trying to climb over obstacles. That extra bit of grip can mean the difference between you actually being able to climb over it and get on the other side, or falling off the side, losing grip, and not achieving your goal that you set out to do. Now, that's why I prefer it for my off-road vehicles, and I mentioned that for my on-road vehicles, I do more of that. So what I do like to do is avoid the soft area, not because I don't want the added benefit. I would love to have the added benefit, but I don't want to be changing tires every week. So what I do to avoid that is I move towards more of like a hard tire so that I can get the added benefit of tread life. When you move to a harder compound within the tire, you're going to get the ability to put more kilometers on that tire tread, and the tire will essentially last longer. And of course, what you're going to be doing is giving up on all of these benefits of the soft tire tread. This is going to be the compromise that you have to make between each one of them, and that's going to be the difference between going from soft to hard or from hard to a soft treaded tire. So now that we know that, let's take a look at our fourth item here on the board, and that's the diameter of the tire. The diameter of the tire does make quite a difference when it comes to the application or selection for our radio control vehicle. And here you can see one of my amazing drawings showing the diameter of a larger tire versus a smaller tire, and this is some of the effects that you get when you change the diameter of the tire. So if you have a off-road vehicle, there is a great advantage to moving to a larger diameter tire, and that's because it's easier to climb obstacles with a larger tire. You can climb the curb once you hit a certain tire diameter, then any vehicle is essentially able to do it, and that's because of the size of the tire. Another area that you're able to benefit with the larger diameter tires, you can hit higher speeds without changing your gearing. So there's a little bit of a catch-22 when it comes to speed, because if you do end up wanting more speed, you can have a larger tire, but then it's going to give you more of an ease to have that tire start to balloon. And that's because of all the forces that are happening when you actually accelerate the tire up to a constant speed, and that speed is going to cause the tire to move out of shape. So essentially what it comes down to diameter, you'll see that the off-road radio control vehicle is going to have larger diameters for the tire, and your on-road vehicle, remember this is a 1/10 scale monster truck that uses this tire, and this is a larger vehicle, a 1/8 scale radio control car on-road that has a much smaller diameter tire. And that's because all of the characteristics that you get from the diameter is perfect for off-road, and then going to the smaller tire is going to have all the characteristics that is essentially more perfect for the on-road application. Now, even though we just covered all of these different parameters and things that affect our car's tire when we put it onto our radio control vehicle, there are some other key areas that are important as well. For example, if you're trying to achieve a certain speed with your radio controlled vehicle, you're not going to be able to do that with just any tire, especially if you're trying to go well above the 100-mile-an-hour range. And for the perfect example to look at is, again, the same tire we keep grabbing versus this guy. Both of these come on a 1/8 scale radio controlled car, but as I mentioned, this guy here at 55 miles an hour or more is in jeopardy of throwing the treads apart. And the reason is because this specific tire that is designed to go over 100 miles an hour actually has some steel belting that hold everything together under those extreme forces that you see at higher speeds. So it's a bunch of these different characteristics that are not so common when you're looking at specific applications that you also have to think about. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed that video and learned a little bit about all of the different characteristics of a tire and how that can possibly affect your decision to place a tire onto your specific radio controlled car. Whether you're using that radio controlled car for on-road, off-road, there is definitely a difference in the tires that you can select in order to benefit that specific application. As always, like the video if you do, subscribe if you haven't, and come join the journey as we explore an infinite amount of topics about radio control. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next Monday.